tell me a little bit about your practice. Give me the elevator pitch. If I bump into you at NCPA and we meet in the elevator, tell me about Phipps Pharmacy.
I'll try my best. I'll try not to have a super long elevator ride here. I have me personally. I started pharmacy as a drug information resident. So I'm not your normal independent community pharmacist. My plan was to work in the drug industry. So I did a residency in drug information and pharmacotherapy. But during that residency, I had an opportunity to open a pharmacy. And so I got a call from a friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, would you like to come work for me? We're opening a pharmacy." And I said, "I'm really not that interested in working for you, but I would consider being a partner." And for the pharmacy students that may listen to the podcast, it's important because I knew this person because I was involved as a student. I was a national APHA ASP national president, and they gave me connections. And so I met with him, the two gentlemen and brothers, and and we worked it out so that we started a pharmacy fresh out of residency. So I've actually never worked for anyone else.
Wow.
Which really, as a manager, I've learned over the years that presented a little bit of problem because I literally got my first box of computer equipment, didn't know how to put it together, but we didn't have the money for an IT guy to come in. So I learned how to put it together, and I've learned to solve problems on my own. So that's how we started. Currently, I own 4 pharmacies, all in Middle and West Tennessee, and am blessed to have an amazing team. So that's the elevator pitch. We do compounding, normal community pharmacy practice, lots of immunizations, lots of COVID shots have been very prominent for us. We've tried to stay on the edge. We did one of the few people in Tennessee doing monoclonal antibodies when we had that opportunity, and I'm always open to expanding and looking at new ideas. But that's the quick version of what we do. And as we talk a little bit, I'll talk about how we got here and what really, we had a big evolution like 2 or 3 years ago that got us where we're at now, I believe. And that'll be further along down the discussion. But that's the elevator pitch of where we start at.
Nice. What time frame was that? Like, what year was that when you were coming out of residency and took those first steps into a pharmacy ownership?
So I know that I only look like I'm 30. However, I've been out of school a little longer. I graduated in 99 and then did a residency in 2000. Opened my first pharmacy in June 5th of 2000. I had opened and sold and did a couple things along the way, but I've always been an independent owner. I bought my partners out after I believe it was a year and a half. Great fellas, still friends and talk on a regular basis, but it was one of those things I think that I was meant to be an owner on my own rather than a partner. And partners are great, but I'm very aggressive and want to change, and so it was a good move for me to make sure that that I took over. And so after a year and a half, I've taken over, and we went from there.
Looking back, like, what kind of advice would you give somebody in that situation today? And is it because the market has changed, and it's a different world than it was in 2000? Or, everything being equal, do you look back and say, if you were coming out of pharmacy school, you're going to gain so much insight. You should work at an independent for 5 years first, or you should work in a big box and know your enemy, and then go to an independent for 3 years. What do you think would be ideal if you were looking back with what you know now?
Ideal would be working with an independent for a few years. I will say the advantage of going out and truly going on your own, and my partners were, like I said, were great people, but they weren't in the store. One of them walked in the store once and said, "Oh, it looks great," and he left. And the other one spent a little bit of time there, but we never worked the counter together. We never took care of patients together. That's not necessarily the ideal situation. But what it does present and give you is you have to be able to solve problems. And to me, that's what you want to be able to do. And that's what community pharmacy practitioners do, is we just solve problems. And so ideally, though, I think if you could work for 3 or 4 years with an independent and then open your practice, I will say the advantage of not ever working for anybody else is I wasn't used to making a certain salary. When I graduated from a residency, what I was making as an independent owner was not what my friends were making, but it was a whole lot better than it was when I was a resident. Now, I told a story again this week about how when I first opened up, I had a house in Memphis where I went to pharmacy school, bought a house in McKenzie, and so I would go to the bank to borrow money for the business to write myself a check to pay my 2 mortgages. And so that's not for everybody, but I'm risk averse, and so I'm not. You have to be a little aggressive, a little enjoy risk a little bit to do this. So if you had the opportunity, I definitely would work with somebody. But if you had the right person and they were aggressive enough, I wouldn't hold anybody back from going to do it on their own initially. Now, there's some hard lessons to learn, very hard lessons and expensive lessons that you learn when you do it on your own from scratch. But sometimes then you look back and you're like, well, at least we made it through it, and you grow through all those things.
Yeah, I always try to look at the mistakes that I've made that cost me money and opportunities and and emotional scars and everything else, and I try to look at those as an investment and myself, and like you got to keep moving forward and don't let that bring you down. But I think really it sounds like you kind of have to know yourself too. For that. That's definitely not for everybody. And, what's interesting is through this podcast and just through working at Pioneer RX, I've met so many pharmacists that just have different personalities and different focuses. There's some personalities that are amazing business owners, and that's the part of pharmacy that they really enjoy. And then there are pharmacy leaders who are changing the industry and raising the bar, who aren't owners because they don't enjoy the business backroom side of it. They really enjoy the clinical and patient care side of it. So it sounds like self-awareness is a huge part of that. But I can also see if you come out of pharmacy school, you've been hungry, you're going through school, you're working hard, and then you finally get to that level of comfort that comes with being a bench pharmacist somewhere. It can be really hard to go backwards.
Absolutely. And the situations will, I guess a big advice is the situation will never be perfect. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine recently, and the price of pharmacies are down right now. So if you're looking at buying a pharmacy, now is a great time from the purchase side. Now, the business, we're not making as much money, so that's why there's one of the reasons why the price of them are down. The other is the buyers are out of the market. There's not as many chains buying pharmacies as there was, but we talked and he's like, hey, I want to pay off my student loans before I buy a pharmacy. I want to pay off my truck before I'd really like to have more paid on my house. Well, it's never going to be perfect. You're never going to, unless you just happen to win the lottery and you've got tons of money. And if you do, you probably need to do something outside of pharmacy if you're really interested in making lots of money. But it's never going to be perfect. And so a lot of people I see want to own their own pharmacy, but they don't never take that step because the scenario is never perfect. Having 2 mortgages, having a business loan, starting from scratch, filling 13 prescriptions your first day. That's not ideal. That's not where you want to be. And was it perfect? No, it wasn't perfect. But if you wait for it to be perfect, I think you'll be waiting forever, and then you'll be, retirement age going, man, I wish I'd really bought a pharmacy. I wish I'd tried it. You can put as many challenges in front of you as you want to. There's always going to be something. But to me, I'm always looking for the positive. Where can we go forward? What can we make out of this? Let's take advantage of the opportunities that we can when we can take advantage of them. And I'm definitely a glass half full person, not a glass half empty. And I try to steer away from people that are negative and looking for those problems. I'm always looking for a solution. And that's what I think that's what's made us successful for 20 years, 22 years now, starting from scratch, is that we're always looking for a solution.
Yeah, outlooks are really contagious. So yeah, make sure you have people with that positive outlook around you. But yeah, that timing is never right with anything in life. Is it the right time to get married, to have kids, to go back to school? There's always adversity with any of those. So you move into that first pharmacy ownership role. Tell me how that kind of moved forward into 4 locations.
Well, one of the big things was it was just keeping my ears open, talking to people, finding out, asking sales reps and suppliers, hey, do you know of anybody that might be willing to sell? And I had the opportunity where a couple of people called and said, hey, do you want to buy my pharmacy? I bought my second location, which I then transferred to someone else for ownership, sold it, but 2 years in. So I was at 2 stores in 2 years. And then 2008 was a big year. We opened a store and built a store. And then really we were a little stagnant for a while. We didn't have a lot of growth. We were growing inside, but not outwardly. And one of those reasons is one of the stores that I opened just never panned out, and I kept the money from all the other locations were feeding it, trying to keep it afloat. And probably one of the wisest business decisions I ever made was to combine two locations, which was hard because I'm not a quitter. I don't like the idea of just tapping out and being done. But that actually started turning things around whenever we combined the 2 locations. Our business actually picked up. They were about 4 miles apart in a town of about 70,000 people. So that 4 miles is far enough that you would think they would be okay, but they just never did. One of them, the locations never did well. And that was one of the biggest mental challenges for me, was to say, all right, let's just throw the towel in. And that's one of the lessons I learned hard. We could have been in a different place financially if we had done that sooner. So now I know. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that you wish you could do over, but it changes the way that I think about things now. And it definitely makes me a better business person, knowing that one location was not the right one. Now let's go and move somewhere else. And so we sat with 2 locations for several years, 4 or 5 years. And honestly, about 2017, 18, somewhere in that time frame, I had a medical issue. I actually started having weird sensations down my spinal cord, where I just fall out, like not pass out, but just where I would lose control of my arms and legs.
Oh gosh.
And got to the point where I could not. I'm right-handed, and I could not feed myself with my right arm. And so I finally, after that, decided I needed to go to a doctor. When I was trying to shave one day, and I was going like, picking my arm up to get the razor to my face, I thought, well, maybe I need to get this checked out. So basically, the part of the bones in my vertebra were blocking the spinal column. They had grown in about half the way and had blocked part of that the spinal cord. And the physician came in and talked to me, and he said, this is not an emergency, but I would say we probably need to do this in the next couple of weeks. So I'm like, okay. And I said, well, what if I don't? And he said, well, I think you'll be paralyzed from the neck down. And so, honestly, that changed a lot of how I thought about things. I became a lot more aggressive in business, a lot more aggressive in life. Started trying to take advantage of every day a little differently. And really, then I think the gladiator mindset came on me of how do you battle every day, and how do you make sure that you're taking advantage of every opportunity that you have. And so that really changed me, but also changed our pharmacy practice and where I'm looking at. So that was a really the evolutionary standpoint, where if you look for a point in time in your life when that happens, what changes you? That's it. 4 surgeries in less than 2 years. It was a really a challenging situation, but it's made us much more successful because of the challenges that we faced, that I faced because of that.
You switched over to the electronic MedSync in the system, taking advantage of what workflow steps did you turn on? So you said verification, but kind of walk me down kind of stage 1 of your changes.
Yeah. So everything is in the system. That was our big piece. We did not want our technicians running around. I wanted you to just do everything you're doing in a circle. If you had to move, nobody's moving. So we moved our processors to the back, and they're doing all of our e-scripts, all of our rejected claims, anything that's in the to-do list, they're working on that. Any script that comes through. At that point, it goes into our print queue, and the people in the front, our technicians who are actually filling, they work out of that print queue all day based off priority. So we have waiters, do we have deliveries, do we have med planners? And so they're constantly watching that, and do we have sync patients? And they'll print that out, and everything, nothing is printed beforehand. So they print it at the time that they're actually filling it. And then once they fill it, it goes into a basket based off priority and actually just slides right down to the pharmacist. And we only have one pharmacist at a time that's checking. The other ones are doing other odds and ends throughout the store. And so that pharmacist will then check it, and then they'll immediately, all they got to do is just turn around and they set it on a little island, and that's our customer service. And we utilize a hanging bag system, and also we utilize Pioneer's bin system as well. We use the bin system for orders and things like that. And then they bag it, and then we use the point of sale system in Pioneer, and it's sold. So nobody has to move hardly at all. And we're running with, I think we have 2 processors, one of which is normally doing med planners. And we have 3 counters and 1 pharmacist, and we're rocking anywhere from 650 to 800 a day on a 10-hour shift. And nobody's mad at each other. We leave, we're all happy, everything's good. It's just a normal day.
Yeah. Do you have automation in place, or is everything being filled? Okay. So what automation?
We have 1 Parata Max, and we have 1 Icon. And
Gotcha.
we do have, for our med planners, we have a Rapid Pack through RxSafe. And so that's it. That's all we use. The Parata Max is a workhorse, but it has its limitations as well, just like anything. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say limited automation, but not where we don't have systems everywhere. And our workflow's pretty legit.
Nice. Does your team have a nickname for your automations? I'm always curious.
They don't. Like
No?
when I bought it, I'm like, hey, whoever comes up with the coolest name gets $50. And they just did not care. I think they call it Max, or they're always mad at it because it's out of vowels or something silly, but they don't have a name for it randomly.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't do that either. I call I don't name I'm a car guy, but I don't name my cars. It's the bus, it's the bike, it's the bug, whatever. But it's always fun when you go to a pharmacy and you're like, hey, where's this prescription? Oh, it's Gertrude has it.
Yeah, Lucille's got it back there. And why is it? It's always a girl's name.
It is. It's always like 2 generations, 3 generations back.
Your grandmother's friend's name. Yeah.
So, was that automation in place ahead of time, or did you add that during the revamp?
It was in place ahead of time, but it didn't work very well.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we made sure that when we built in our workflow, and it gets a little bit more detailed, but each position has something to do. So every counter, not only are they counting, but throughout the day, they have a specific role. And one of those is to work on automation. So fill in the robot, any errors they have, put new labels. So before that, we just kind of threw it in there. We're like, it's going to work. They told us it's going to be great. And we're just running around. We have no idea what we're doing. And it was never full. And it was more of a pain than it is now.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely something that has to be monitored for it to be, to add efficiency. So I can imagine as a young pharmacist coming into a team in a small town, there's probably a lot of team members with some tenure there that have been there for a little while, which is a great way to help a young pharmacist acclimate and learn the ropes. So the good thing is, a tenured team with lots of experience. The bad thing is there's a tenured team with lots of experience that's not going to want to change based on.
Yeah. So, I tell people when I go and I talk to them about workflow and leadership and that kind of stuff, that when you make the decision to change things, you're going to hurt some people's feelings. And you have to be okay with that. And I can remember the night that we had, in order to do the workflow, I wrote up this beautiful synopsis of why we're doing it. And I had a team meeting. I cried. Like, I was just talking about how passionate I am about the store and them and the patients, and put everything into place. And they all, and I don't want to use the word, I will use it. They bought in to what I was talking about, except for one. And she walked out. And I had to be okay with that. Right.
Yeah.
And, and we're still good friends. She comes to the store still. It just, that didn't fit with who she was at the moment, and that's fine. But yeah, you got to be prepared that when you change things, people don't like change. I'm the weird one that does, and so I have to convince them that change is good. And my team has seen that we change stuff all the time, so now they know we're not changing anything unless Adam thinks it's going to be something awesome and make our day better. So they're kind of eager about it. But those first few times you really start changing things, it is very, very difficult. I've actually got a technician. She's my store leader. She runs the store. I don't even run my own store. But she's been a tech longer here than I have. She was here when I was hired. So she's got my back, and she trusts what I do, and I really trust her. But yeah, the tenured people, it was working, and they don't understand that you're growing. And that means change. And so change is scary sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like you walked in, kind of broke apart that kind of linear workflow and segmented it. I like the idea of having some of the data entry back here. So everything from data entry, they go through running cycles, priority fill requests, refill requests, anything that's called in, I guess. It's all ran back here. You mentioned the print queue, which I love because if you're not familiar with the print queue, that is in Pioneer RX. Other softwares have print queues as well. I really like the Pioneer RX software because it will help you assemble that patient's complete order. So hey, there's an inventory issue, or they still have prescriptions and workflow. So nothing's printed until you have that whole order ready, which makes a lot of sense. So now they're shopping, dispensing, pharmacist is verifying. Did you make any changes to the way you handled those different priorities?
Let's see. I'm trying to think how we did that. And let me go back real quick. The processors, one of the things that we found out when I was doing my analysis of workflow at all the stores is one of our biggest hurdles to efficiencies in the pharmacy is actually the patients. And that's what we had here. It sounds counterintuitive, but our patients are coming to the window. They're asking you to come out front and help. The phone's ringing. They're leaning over the counter, watching what you're doing, talking to you about, what you did this weekend. So there was a lot of, I had to come up with the idea of how do I get my people that are doing the processing, which that's where your money's made. How do I get those away from patients? And that sounded weird to me, because that's what we've always done is we want to go out and talk with the patients. And so that's what I did is I literally moved them to the back. They don't answer the phones. They don't do anything, but they're just processing. And so once they're getting everything done and it's thrown in the print queue, the biggest thing on priority is we did it based off of time, date and time. So that way with our sync patients, we know we have a little schedule of when we're doing certain sync. They're in there a little bit later and they're returning. And we have waiters, we have delivery, we have med planners. And then I was very adamant to teach my team that in their view, when they log in, they can change that view to however they want to look at it to prioritize it. So that was a big one, was really teaching them that they can customize their own view. It didn't have to be based off the way I do things. And so once they figured that piece out and they moved things around and times and dates, and if they wanted it to all be open or not open, that really helped them to be more efficient because that's the way they like to do it.
Yeah, and inevitably, anytime I, go to a pharmacy, I learn something just by standing back and watching just the different team members work, because it's like, that's a different way than I've ever done it in the system. That's really smart. I like that. So
yeah, and I found too that I learn more about the new updates too. So sometimes I'll read about an update, but I don't really utilize it. But then if I go to another store and they're doing it, I'm like, I read about that, but I haven't done it yet, and I really like it. So I learned a lot that way too.
There's a ton of stuff going on that we're trying to build infrastructure for, and things that we have built infrastructure for already. But I think, as everyone is focused on shifting to clinical, I think COVID is still kind of like this behemoth that's like taking all our attention away from the things that we ought to be doing at the same time. Mm-hmm. So our state is making some big changes. California, they're switching a lot of the managed care to fee-for-service. So a lot of it's going back to straight Medi-Cal fee-for-service.
Okay.
So that's going to create some headache maybe for the first couple months in California as we transition all the patients to fee-for-service Medi-Cal. But that also, I feel like that opens some opportunity, because the managed care is still in charge of their, overall health, right? It's just the prescriptions they're no longer managing. So there's going to be a lot of synergies with managed care, I think, next year. And there's already some going on right now. Like I'm in a pilot program with one of the major MCOs in our area, to manage. Currently, the target is asthma, COPD, and we do what's called comprehensive medication management. So it's like a full-on holistic approach to the patient, not only addressing their asthma, but also any other disease states that they may have. And the goal is to reduce hospitalizations and ER visits. So I think that's like, it's standard what most plans want. They want to reduce costs and improve patient care.
So the people that you're piloting this with, is it a per member per month? Is it a some kind of fee for service?
So it is initially the way that it works is appointment based.
Okay.
So we get paid for appointments up to a certain amount, and then at the end of the measurement period, if we were able to reduce their utilization score, then we get paid a bonus to do that. So it's pretty interesting. They're starting out small, and that's why it's still a pilot, and to see if it's something that they can do on a larger scale. But it does require it does require the proper staff, the proper workflow, because you're doing all medical billing type activities. It's not prescription filling, but there are some synergies too. So, for instance, if you have a collaborative practice agreement and that patient happens to be one of those prescribers' patients, then you can make adjustments, add drugs that are missing, and tailor the patient drug therapy appropriately. So it's a win-win. You can. It also helps with sync. Also helps identify patients that should be on certain types of emergency meds that they're not on, or if they need like some kind of patient education, aero chambers, or if they need to be trained on how to use a peak flow meter. There's a variety of different services that can be attached to it.
Was this a part of CPESN, or was this?
This was another program that was the brainchild of USC and LA Care and IHP. It's called the California Right Meds Collaborative.
Okay.
So it's just they wanted a holistic approach to taking care of patients, and they wanted to try that out.
How long is that, the pilot period?
Oh, we've been, I think we've been doing this current pilot for over almost a year. And then what they'll do is they'll switch to another disease state focus every year, and then bring on additional pharmacies. So that's the goal, is to expand.
Huh.
You know.
How is so you've been doing it a year? How's the success been?
Right now, initially it was pretty good, because we did have a few patients, but what we're finding out is, I guess the patients in our area are pretty well managed, because what they do is they do they filter down the data, and they look for those high risk patients. And my store didn't have very many of them, so they're reaching out to the existing. They're reaching out the radius.
Okay.
So that it encompasses more patients. So
are they
we'll
reaching out and
goes.
trying to get people to switch to your pharmacy to be under this program?
Well, that's not the goal of the program. It's more we can manage these patients if they're not ours as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So the ones they're finding, you're managing them, but they're not necessarily switching their prescriptions to you. Right.
So we haven't had we've had small handful of those type of patients. It's just the pool of patients is not that huge. Initially, they target patients based on what they call the RUB score, and that's the utilization band score, cost score. And apparently in our area or my pharmacy, we've managed our patients well enough that they don't have high scores. So they have to reach out and find patients that have high scores that are going to different pharmacies or that are, within the vicinity. So because the idea is also face-to-face is an important aspect of this.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. One of the challenges there of being a better pharmacy is that you don't have as much improvement to try to sell somebody on. Why should I pay you for this? You're already doing it and doing a great job. Well, you have to pay me for it because if I leave, the next guy's not going to do a great job, right? You've got to invest in me to keep, you've got to realize I'm doing this, and those guys down the street who are selling beauty products, they're not going to do it. And, that's a sell. It's a challenging one. So what else is going on? So we're doing this pilot program.
So along the same lines, that the clinical switch is what we're looking for. The state has now opened what they call their pharmacy MTM program, and that allows us to medically bill, to manage high risk patients, patients that are on expensive, complex medication therapy, multiple disease states, and that also has the same similar workflow as doing CMM and some of these other activities that that we engage in already. But now it'll be a billable activity.
Okay. And that's Medicaid?
So that's Medicaid, state Medicaid. Yeah. So we're transitioning pretty well. And the, for Medicaid, it's actually very broad, the criteria for the ability for us to bill, for that. So I feel like, if you haven't already been participating in transformation projects like Flip the Pharmacy or to get ready for these clinical services, there's no way that you're going to be able to do MTM. It's just, it takes so much out of workflow. You need, you have to pull someone out to do it. And then if you haven't been doing vaccinations or haven't been using some kind of scheduling platform, a lot of these are schedule-based or appointment-based type activities. So that's why it's important. You have to learn how to do it before you actually start doing it.
What are you using for scheduling?
So we use Acuity for different types of scheduling. We also use the state's vaccine platform, MyTurn, to do scheduling for vaccines. So like services like flu shots and testing and things like that will filter through Acuity.
What would you so some of these things like, hey, I should be trying to do Flip the Pharmacy. What would you say to somebody in California who's not in CPESN?
I think you need to join CPESN. I think you need to, we're a group of like-minded pharmacies that are focused on, clinical, to step outside of the box and do something other than filling. And I think that it's important to be part of this group and think, because my motto has always been, there's no way that I myself can manage a plan that has 1 million lives. It's just impossible, right?
Yep.
We have to work as a group, and you have to start thinking, togetherness instead of independentness. You got to think consolidated, because large companies, they don't want to deal with individual companies and contract with individual companies.
Mm-hmm.
They would rather do a single sign-on, single contract with a large clinical network, right?
Yep.
Just makes more sense cost-wise.
Has it been growing? Has CPS in California been growing?
We have been growing, yes. And we still need a ton of pharmacies to make what we call network adequacy.
Okay.
But California, it's a very hard market. Everyone is still very focused on themselves.
Right.
I was guilty of it for a long, long, long time. Until, the realization came, there's no way I can do this by myself. I need to start sharing information. I need to, start educating people, because, what another saying is, rising tide lifts all boats.
Yep.
So what was it that made you get to that point that said, hey, I need to be on CPESN and I need to be doing MedSync?
So a long time ago, I attended, I think it was at a ThoughtSpot, and I saw the presentation, and I saw that it was being done. It was in my head already. I was like, we need to do more clinical. We got to do something clinical, because that's where the future is. The reimbursement is horrible, right? And it's not getting any better. And the DRE fees are getting higher every year. It's like, we need to take ourselves out of that. So when I saw it, it was instant click. Like, do we have that for California? And why haven't I heard of it? And we hadn't had it in California yet. So
you were member number what in California, CPESN?
Onboarded.
Number one. I believe that.
I don't know. There was maybe 2 or 3 of us, and we were all
Came
like,
on
boom.
the same time. Yeah.
When you were buying them, is it? And the only reason I say is I've heard this more, but is it? Did you see an opportunity where someone was like, look, I'm trying to retire and I don't have somebody to pass this to? These are conversations I have, and this is just me trying to get some of Vicki's feedback. Where, hey, I'm trying to retire. We're just at a certain point where some of these pharmacies are in that little bit of a bubble of trying to retire. Either I'm converting to Pioneer because I want to make it more attractive to sell because I want to sell it to another independent. Is that more the case for you guys when you guys bought those 3 or whatever, where someone maybe didn't have somebody to kind of pass it on to, or?
Yeah, we had, honestly, I think we just had one like that. And it's our busiest community retail pharmacy, and that was a gentleman who wanted to retire and didn't have anybody that was in the wings, kind of waiting to a junior partner to take over. The other ones, we've had a couple physician owned pharmacies that transitioned from that clinic owned to and that's just them operating a pharmacy. Pharmacy is complex, so
if it's not your wheelhouse, it makes sense.
Yeah, we see a lot of our growth from existing Pioneer owners, opening up new stores, buying stores, and converting to Pioneer.
Yep.
The lead source is Pioneer X owner. And it's one of those things when people ask me, well, how is independent pharmacy? Isn't that dying? I'm like, well, the people who know it really well are opening up new stores and buying stores. So the people who know how to run a good business and are involved and connected to their community are doing great. And they're running great businesses. And the people who think they can open a pharmacy and hang a sign are not,
No, we really rely a lot on Pioneer and what we're able to see, like when even just in the middle of filling a prescription, just being able to identify the DIR fees, just giving us as much information, and also not overloading, right, but giving our teams just things that they can take action on that is going to bring a positive impact. So we're thrilled with what we're able to do, and with Pioneer. So yeah, thanks you guys. Keep it up.
What's the where do y'all need the biggest help today?
You know, we do have a focus on our loyalty program for this year. I mean, that's going to really match up well with our patient growth goal. So I think that is maybe just some work or some, you know, expanding the loyalty program. So I don't know if that's something you guys are looking at, or we've found, and we've never gone to a specific point of sale system that's more like I guess that's what their main focus is. You know, we've always had the pharmacy point of sale system, which has been fine for us. Our stores aren't that large. So yeah, I guess that would be, I'm curious, is there anything in the loyalty program that you guys are working on?
I'd be interested to see. We'll have to connect after this and kind of talk about what your kind of ideas are. We have a deal. We just got a patent
on something, right?
Yeah, which is called community points. Which would be interesting to see what your idea that is. And the concept of, so we had this idea that I'd like to be able to give away points. I want to give away a lot of points, right? I want to give away points because you put your blood pressure in, or give you points for walking 10,000 feet, or give you points for refilling over the web. But in general today, loyalty points are tied to purchases, and they're a portion of your purchase, right? So you buy this OTC, we're going to pull back 1% of it. And so I just can't give away points. So the idea of community points is that a store in a community would say, okay, so this month our charities are high school bands. And so we've got $5,000 we're going to give to the high school bands based on how the points distribute. And so you can, on our mobile app, you can put in who you want your money to go to. And as you generate points, we'll show you a scoreboard. And then at the end of the month, we're going to divide the money based on the points that were generated. And so, you know, you could see the local band saying, hey, go to Good Day Pharmacy and buy this. You know, you get or if you just go inside and check in, you get points. But the idea of community points is that you kind of got a limited spend. It's more of a marketing spend rather than having points tied to dollars. And it also gets around probably some of the government not being able to do government points and things like that. But we just got a patent of that, and that's the thing we're looking at adding to our mobile app.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is, you know, we were kind of looking at when we set up the loyalty program, you know, could we give points for someone getting a immunization? Right. And, or signing up for MedSync. So, because those are things we want that to be like a driver. So we want that incentive back. We've got a diabetes trial that we're participating in. And so we're going to be, we have a diabetes trial that we're going to be recruiting patients. And then we also have a diabetes prevention program that we're recruiting patients. So anything that can kind of incentivize or reward would be super handy.
Yeah. Who's the payer on the diabetes program?
And what is it?
So the diabetes, the prevention program is tied to, it's a state grant.
Okay.
So we're partnered with, there are 10 pharmacies in the grant, and we're partnered with the school pharmacy in Colorado, in Boulder, or actually it's in Denver. And so the payer is the state of Colorado. And there's 3 components to it. There's an MTM component. There's a education component for those patients that already have diabetes. And then the one we're recruiting for now is a prevention program. So they don't have the diagnosis, but they have risk factors. And it's a class-based, you know, just again, giving them the tools to not fall into that.
How's that going to be documented and measured?
Well, the formula or the structure of the classes is pretty set. I mean, that's already, and as far as measured, you know, we'll do A1Cs. So that's, I guess, part of it. We'll do weight, blood pressure, but it's more education based.
I gotcha. I was thinking like e-care plans or care plans.
Yeah, so how are you getting back to the grant authority? Right. I mean, I imagine you make a report or something.
Yeah, I imagine you're just you're mining your own data.
Yeah. So, you know, you have the areas, or I guess the measures that you have to come up with and you have to hit as part of the grant. But e-care plans are definitely, we're doing tons of those. We're part of Flip the Pharmacy with CPESN, so we're kind of following that. It's all around COVID now, but before that, of course, it was a lot of blood pressure, a lot of e-care plans. So we're really I think we're in a good place there and ready to take that next step.
How is CPESN doing in Colorado?
Good. I mean, we have about 40 locations in Colorado. But yeah, I feel good about the Flip the Pharmacy piece. And, again, it's all based on COVID right now, which is where it needs to be. I really appreciate that they are able to shift and respond to what is really needed, and very practical applications with workflows and procedures, and just really giving people tools.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you get your podcast.
Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts to help us reach more pharmacy professionals like you.